Gemar Tov, everybody. I'm going to need way more than that if I'm going to get through this. Gemar Tov, everybody. Come on. We're all fasting. We're all hungry. We're all tired, but we're all happy to be together on this meaningful and important day. So a rabbi dies. Talk about happy. And he finds himself waiting in line to enter heaven. The guy in front of him has a shaved head, has gold chains, has a leather jacket on, he's got shades, he's got sunglasses, and the angel Gabriel asks the bald guy, name, occupation, Rafi Ashkenazi, I'm a taxi driver, he says. Angel checks the list, smiles, Shalom Alechem, welcome, here's your silk robe, here's your gold staff, welcome to heaven. Next comes the rabbi. Name and occupation. Rabbi draws himself up a little bit with great dignity. Avraham Baruch Cohen, senior rabbi of Beth Jacob Synagogue, 37 years. The angel Gabriel checks his list and nods. All right, yeah, okay. Cotton robe, here you go. Wooden staff, here you go. Keep it moving. Let's keep it moving, please. Hold on, the rabbi says. I'm Rabbi Cohen. The man before me was a taxi driver. I, an esteemed rabbi, why does he get all this special attention? Well, says the angel Gabriel, up here, it's all about results. When you gave a sermon, people slept. When he drove, people prayed. You ever take an Uber from LaGuardia? And you know what I mean. My friends, I'm going to give a sermon now this morning before Yizkor about a subject that I've never spoken about here at TBT, and a subject that I've never even really taught a class on. It's a sermon about the afterlife, which I hope won't put you to sleep, but on the contrary, I hope will wake you up, wake us all up to how we think as Jews about this taboo kind of subject. If I went around the room right now, and it's a pretty full crowd, and I asked each and every one of you, what is your belief about the afterlife? What do you think happens? I guess I would get a slightly different answer from every single person in the room. What happens after I die? It's one of those subjects that as Jews, we're shy, we're reluctant to speak about, unlike all the other faiths that I'm a little jealous. They seem to have so much certainty when they talk about, and a lot to say about, the afterlife. As Jews, I think we're either too smart or too humble. I'm not sure which. But Judaism famously is very cautious around answering the question, what happens after this life? It is for us a taboo subject. It is for us a little uncomfortable. It's the morbid elephant in the room, come Yizkor. My wife, Kaylee, is a rabbi, but she works not as a congregational rabbi, she works as a hospice chaplain. She spends all day when she's working, sitting with people who are at the very end of their lives, the last days, sometimes the last hours or the last minutes. And when we tell people that over dinner, we're not exactly the life of the party. Everyone always says to her, how do you do it? It must be so hard. People get so squeamish talking about such things. And I think for good reason. Who wants to think about dying? Why would you want to think about such a thing? We put so much energy, all of our energy, into building these beautiful lives that we live, the particulars that go into building our families. We build our careers, our interests, our passions we pursue. Everything we do for building a life, and it's scary to think about how that could all be over in just an instant. Who wants to think about it? Well, I want to take some time to think about it with you this morning, to clear the air a little bit, to address that morbid elephant in the room, because it is Yizkor. It is our time for missing our loved ones and thinking about them, those who have gone from this earth, and all of us, I bet, wonder on some level. We can't help but wonder to what extent they're completely gone and to what extent there is a continuation. And even more than that, Yom Kippur and Yizkor are supposed to put all of us in touch with our own mortality. If we avoid it all year, one philosopher, Blaise Pascal, wrote, all of human activity is nothing more than just a diversion from the inescapable reality of the fact of death. Pascal would have loved Yom Kippur, because on Yom Kippur we face it. On Yom Kippur, do we not ask during Unatana Tokef, the prayer right after Yizkor, Mi yichye u'mi yamut, who will live and who will die? How many will come in and how many will pass? Do we not read a Torah reading that we just read? Its name, Acharei Mot, which literally means after death. Do we not ask on Yom Kippur the most important question a human being can ask? What is my life? And how do I build a life not just worth living, but a life worth remembering? We should all be asking that question. Do we not wear white like a shroud and abstain from food and pleasure and distance ourselves from mortal pursuits? It's not meant to scare us, but to wake us up to life and all the blessings that we appreciate about the gift of life, but also to think about what is beyond. So if I were to poll the room, I would get a lot of different responses. First, there would be the rationalists in the crowd, the very practical-minded Jews, the ones who don't like all that spiritual pie-in-the-sky stuff. I suspect it's mostly the accountants and the lawyers who would say to me when I say what happens after we die, they would say, if we're being really honest, nothing. Maybe our brains just shut down, the body goes back into the earth, it decomposes, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, or as the young people say it today, YOLO, you only live once, and that's it. And that group of people, if you're in that group, don't think that you're too sacrilegious. Because actually the Jewish perspective isn't that far off from some of that belief. Judaism, we know, is very, very life-focused. It says in the Torah, B'charta b'chaim, choose life, because the rabbis were worried that if Jews, maybe like some other faiths, were only thinking about the afterlife, God forbid it would distract us from living our best lives in the here and now, from our mission as a holy people here and now. And the rabbis were worried. They were worried about that. They were worried about heaven and hell as concepts as they were defined and articulated by the early church, because they thought if you're only doing good in this world because of what's to come or because of your fear about what's to come, and it's only about that incentive, the rabbis were worried, then is it really purely a mitzvah? Is it for the right reason? And therefore they focus us always on the here and now. And there is that sense, don't worry so much about what's to come. Don't even talk about it too much. Be humbled before the mystery. It's a very Jewish approach, but there's always more. Others in the room, maybe the more traditional, maybe the more pious among us, would come to me from a different place, and they would talk to me about our Jewish belief in what we call the neshama. Who here knows what a neshama is? Do you know that word? What's neshama? It's a belief that we have in an eternal soul. This idea that can be found in almost every single major religion, in every religious philosophy, even in a lot of secular philosophy, that there's some piece of us, whether you call it a spark of life or a light of consciousness, which, by the way, modern science has yet to fully understand, or your true self, that there's something beyond just these physical bodies that we inhabit for some amount of time that comes from God and that returns to God after this body is no more. And so based on that, they speak to us about what we call in Judaism Olam Haba, which is the Jewish heaven, and Gehenna, which is the Jewish version of hell. And no, the Jewish version of hell is not a long line at ShopRite when you're shopping for breakfast. And no, it's not arriving at breakfast and finding out that there's no locks. But as the rabbis of the Talmud spoke about such things, they spoke about the Jewish version of heaven imagined as this sort of blissful state of oneness and of closeness to God, where that soul, that piece of me that is eternal, that's beyond the body, returns to its source. And it's a returning home. It's not a leaving, it's a homecoming from this very busy vacation that we took here on earth. That's how they thought of it, just like coming home. And Gehenna, which people call Jewish hell, is not hell in the sense that Christians speak about it. It's not a place of eternal punishment and fire and intensity. On the contrary, it's very similar to what Christians would call purgatory. It's a place where the soul, where who you are on the deepest level, goes to be purified and elevated from all the mistakes that you made in life. Gehenna isn't a hell like a punishment. It's a place, to speak about it Jewishly, where all the schmutz that you put on your soul throughout the course of the year gets cleaned up so it can go to God once more. It's like if you drive a car for 10 years and you get some scratches on it, and you get a ding, and you get a dent, and then you want to bring it back to the dealership, and the dealer says, no, I can't take this car as it is. And it gets cleaned up. That's Gehenna. That's the Jewish idea of hell. And it's beautiful. And it's powerful, I think, in its own way, because the people who passed away, who all of us are remembering today, guess what? They weren't perfect. They made mistakes. Our grief is complicated at Yizkor. We don't just remember the good, we remember the bad too. And maybe when we think about them, we don't just think about the good, but we think about their souls having some level of accountability before God for the mistakes they made in life. That can be very healing for us. Third perspective, which is probably the most spiritual, the most new agey, the hippie types in the room will like this perspective, maybe those who know a little Kabbalah. They speak about reincarnation and signs from beyond that come back to alert us here still in this world of their presence. The truth is, not a lot of people know this. Reincarnation is not just a Hindu thing, and it's not just a Buddhist thing. We have a tradition of reincarnation in Judaism. It's what we call Gilgul Nefashot, the return of the soul, from a Hebrew word gal, which means wave. So the Kabbalah says that your life, if you believe this, is like a wave, and the ocean is God, and the wave comes up, and here it is for 80, 90, 100 years if you're lucky, and then it crashes and it goes back to God. But guess what follows every single wave? Another wave. No sooner does it crash than the next one comes, and it comes back up so that it can keep learning and growing and trying to get things right in this world. That life is like a school where you come to learn how to be a soul. And if you don't get it right, you have another chance. And that happens to me, my belief, personally. And some would say, even if you don't believe in that, even if my loved one isn't coming back as another person, or as the Kabbalists would offer in some cases if they weren't so great in life, coming back as some other animal, still you might say, Rabbi, I believe in what we call signs, simanim, where you have a dream that connects us to them, or when a song comes on the radio at that perfect moment when we're thinking about them and it happens to be the song that they loved, or when something happens in life in a way that strikes us and we feel strongly that their essence of who they are is somehow more present, reaching to us from beyond, calling to us from beyond, and we feel close to them again in a way that maybe not everyone understands, but we do. And if you believe that, there is a basis there in Jewish tradition too. The last group of Jews who I would speak to about this question of the afterlife would probably speak in the most modern way of all. They talk to me not about heaven and hell and not about signs and souls and reincarnation and all of that, but just about how those we love live on the most through us, through the lives of the ones they loved and shared their lives with. It's why the first thing we do as Jews when someone passes away is we give tzedakah. Why? We give back to the goodness of this world in their memory, which is our way of saying we are continuing their mission in this world in the good that we do that reflects the good that they did. It's a verse that says, tzedakah tatzil mimavet. Charity rescues from death. Doesn't mean if you give to charity, you're not going to die. It means that when someone good passes from this world, you keep them alive in this world by keeping their goodness alive, by passing all that was good about them on to the next generation however you can. And when you say Kaddish, those words of exaltation that we're going to say in just a moment, it makes them alive again in a sense because it makes us feel close to them and all that was exalted and good about them and their memory and their name and their story comes alive again through us and therefore beyond us, like when the patriarch Abraham passed away in the Torah and it says he was gathered unto his kin because all that he stood for became bound up in all who we are and all that we stand for. My friends, of all those possible answers to that question, which I hope you've given some thought to, and if you haven't, I hope this afternoon and in this coming year, at least you'll have some basis in what we think as Jews. But of all those possible answers, which is the right one? Now I get to be the rabbi and say to you that for even the most skeptical person in the room, and I'm looking around as I speak, and I know who the skeptics are, because you're the ones yawning, I still think there is a beautiful element of truth in each and every one of those perspectives. When we think about what is to come after life, we honor that the not knowing is really scary for every human being who's ever lived. And we're humbled before the mystery. And in response to that, we strive to live our best lives here and now. And when we think about what is to come after life, maybe some of us do imagine the soul, a piece of who we are before this body, reuniting with the source of all life in joy and in connection, and we feel connected to that which is greater than us, and it's beautiful. And when we think about what is to come after life, we feel the presence of those we've loved in the here and now when we remember them, when we hear their favorite song come on the radio, when we see their eyes and their smiles and their intelligence and their goodness in the voices of the children and grandchildren of our next generation. When we think about what is to come after life, we commit to living as they would have wanted us to live, and in so doing, we further their mission in this world. We give them life again. And so as we turn to Yizkor in just a moment, where are our loved ones? Where do we go? God, human life, is but a passing shadow. We are humbled before the enormity of that mystery. On Rosh Hashanah, we pray to be written in the book of life, And on Yom Kippur, we say that book is sealed. But I say to you today, at Yizkor, we remember that the book is never really sealed. And though we miss them dearly and wish they were present with us in life now to share all the blessings and joys of life, and this doesn't take away from that sadness still in the coming year, even still the story of their lives and the story of our lives continue to be written together in the way their love and their goodness impacted our world and impacts our hearts, and in the many, many ways that their presence reaches out to us from beyond life and reminds us, especially today, of our everlasting and eternal love.